Buhari's Director of News and Political Editor, Sambo, joins us now to appraise the state of the presidential race and the entire political barometer with less than 3 weeks to the presidential election. Good morning, Somna. Good to have you join us today.
Good morning, Steve, and good morning, Nee.
Good morning. Somna, let's start this way. I mean, it's exactly 3 weeks to the presidential election. The presidential election and the elections for the National Assembly. Where are we, by your own estimation, politically speaking, and then in terms of the environmental factors? For the first time in a long while, it looks like not just the popularity of the candidates or even their parties will determine the outcome of the election. It is beginning to look to a lot of Nigerians that other factors, economic factors, political factors, social factors, fuel, Naira redesign, economy, security will be part of the things that will determine what happens in 3 weeks' time. Will they be right when they conclude like that? Or you think that the situation is all about the most popular candidate or the most popular party will win? Where are we in your own estimation?
Thank you, Steve, and very good morning to our viewers once again. Let me start by saying that no one would have dreamt in the last decade that Nigeria would get so close to the sort of politics that we are playing at the moment. This has always been the dream of our fathers, founding fathers of this country, that, I mean, our polity should get to a time where the people will be the ultimate deciders of whoever will assume the nation's #1 seat. And so we've seen a situation whereby people who used to wield a lot of power are becoming powerless at the moment. And no one would have ever thought, for example, that the sitting president in the governing party would actually want to, present a situation that's acceptable to all Nigerians by not, siding directly with his political party like we used to have in the past. And no one would have ever fathomed that a governing party would be struggling to measure up with opposition political parties. And no one would have also fathomed that the Nigeria of today, we could actually go towards a runoff. And no one would have also fathomed that with the way we've always been playing our money politics, that someone will have so much money and still feel very powerless at the same time. So it's a measure of some sort of democratic growth, and Nigerians must rally around President Muhammadu Buhari at the risk of being sound as being supportive of him, irrespective of the mistakes that he may have made. The intention of the president to present a level playing field for everybody, irrespective of his party's candidate, is one that we should see as being in consonance with the thinking of the founding fathers of this country, that irrespective of who is in power, those who are aspiring to govern the nation must always see themselves as playing without, quote, the federal might support. And of course, the president seems to have brought in some policies that is being seen by some of his party members and leaders as a sort of politics that is being supported by the cabals. Yes, the president may have made one mistake or the other, and like we would have heard the governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai, saying that, look, yes, in as much as we want the president to provide a level playing field, he shouldn't forget that he's a member of the governing All Progressives Congress, and he ought to support his party and its candidate to ensure that they retain power. But nonetheless, we're seeing President Buhari being someone who gives hope to a lot of Nigerians at this time. And we, as a nation, must ensure that this process eventually births with a candidate that's voted for by the people and not elected by the elites, not being pushed by money politics and, old sort of legacy politics that we've been playing. Now, I have to establish this background before we get into the politics that we are seeing that's ongoing both at the governing party and, of course, the the main opposition parties. Because we would have seen that the main opposition candidate seems to be trying to muzzle out the other two top contenders. That's that of the Labour Party and the NMPP, by quote saying that he's trying to talk with some of them, with someone to step down. And I will say it clearly here that will not help our politics. The two other opposition candidates, apart from Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, must never step down in this election, because we want Nigerians to be the ultimate deciders. The two political parties that have been dominating our polity in the last decade must understand that politics is moving. There's a sort of tectonic power shift from that of, quote, the elites, the cabals, the feudal lords, who just decide that they will be the one to give to the Nigerian people whoever they decide, rather than the Nigerian people exercising their powers and all of that. So right from the signing of the Electoral Act, which of course a lot of Nigerians had to put pressure on the governing APC and its president to ensure that that document was appended to, we'll see that even the Independent National Electoral Commission knows that the 2023 election cannot, will not, and should not be tampered with by the governing party, its president, or the elites, because we're at the threshold where the nation, as it stands right now, is only waiting for the birth of a new Nigeria through that election. And if anything happens to that process, through tampering of the electoral votes of the people, then something may actually go wrong. And I hope that those who hold the nation on our behalf, in terms of the security operatives, will also understand the times that we're in, that this is not a time to resort to self-help on behalf of the people. They must ensure that they are not tampered with or being, in one way or the other, influenced by either the governing party or so. They should read the president's body language. He's willing to birth a process where people will not decide to tamper with the polity because they are rich enough to be able to influence the system and all of that.
But
has it been the dream of our founding fathers all the time? Yes, this has always been. And so we must encourage the process as Nigerians to ensure that we do not allow people to circumvent the process by forcing some people to want to step down, or by doing certain actions because we have been promised certain things by certain people. So these are the best of times for Nigerian politics. Opposition political parties, the lower political parties, are challenging the dominant political parties. And of course, this provides a level playing field for everyone. And of course, that's because the electoral process is deemed to be credible. And that's why we must ensure that INEC today, coincidentally, is the day where they are going on the mock exercise, where they will test the beavers and so on.
Yes.
They should understand that this election holds a lot of potential for the nation.
All right, so, Somna, just a quick one before you come in. I get the point of your argument about allowing the President, Muhammadu Buhari, to create, a level playing field and everything. But that the Kaduna State Governor, El-Rufai, has been speaking. His vituperations are, all over the place. And one of the key things that he has said is to remind the President that he's an APC member, and that he should leave the task of creating a level playing field and allowing a fair, free, and credible election to take place to INEC. And that what he ought to be doing is to be campaigning for the candidate of the party. So if you're saying that what he's doing is about legacy and everything, how will the APC members, and especially the candidate of the APC, perceive that at a time that they think that maybe he's not well disposed to having the candidate of the party succeed him? How will you respond to that?
Thank you, Steve. Now, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the APC presidential candidate, is right alongside his other party leaders like Nasir El-Rufai to accuse Muhammadu Buhari of not supporting them. But there's a difference between Muhammadu Buhari and President Muhammadu Buhari. The president of the country owes his loyalty to the nation. He has to hand over to another president. He has to ensure that he doesn't leave behind a disintegrated nation. History will be behind him if he takes the right decision. And in this instance, the right decision is that it's right for him to actually support his party's candidate. And he ought to do that. He has done that 2 or 3 times, going with the candidate and so on. But the candidate must also understand that the president has state duties to perform. And he has to ensure that all other candidates feel that he's not using state resources to the advantage of the governing party. Hasn't that always been the dream of every Nigerian? I mean, if we go back to our recent political history, you understand that when we had this sort of similar position in 2007, a lot of Nigerians complained that then President Olusegun Obasanjo was using state resources to campaign for his candidate, then candidate Umaru Musa Yar'Adua. And a lot of us were angry because state resources in terms of presidential jets, in terms of monies here and there were being used openly, including converting state institutions, including the presidential villa as meeting points and all of that to advance the cause of the governing party. And that is not how it's supposed to be. We have seen a new example being laid by President Muhammadu Buhari. Yes, Tinubu has the right to complain because Buhari ought to support him. But of course, this same Tinubu told President Buhari, after emerging as the candidate of the party, that he is commending Buhari for presenting a level playing field that made him to emerge. If this same level playing field wasn't provided at the APC National Convention, you and I know that there were some hawks in the presidency that wanted Ahmad Lawan, the president of the Senate, to emerge. There were also another group that wanted Yemi Osinbajo, the vice president, to emerge. Now, if the president had wielded the sort of support that he wants to be given to him right now, I don't think Bola Ahmed Tinubu would have emerged. But does President Muhammadu Buhari, as a person, quote, Muhammadu Buhari, owe some sort of loyalty and support to Tinubu? Yes, he does that. And there are lots of talks here and there that there was a pact between both of them. But let's understand, if there was a pact, that pact was between Tinubu and Buhari, not between APC and Buhari and Tinubu, not between President and Tinubu. So President Buhari seems to be telling Bola Ahmed Tinubu at this point in time that, look, if there's any agreement, it's between you and I, not between the party and you, and not between the position I'm occupying with you. So if they have their own personal issues, they should settle them. President Buhari seems not to also have been showing some good faith with the candidate when you hear the candidate saying certain things and reclining to his tribal areas. I mean, if you would have listened to what Tinubu said yesterday in Ekiti and all of that, some statement, it looks like the candidate is reclining back to quote his region and trying to sound as if he's a candidate of the Yoruba nation. And you would have heard one of the traditional rulers, the Olowo of Owo, also bringing a statement that we think is not acceptable at this time, saying that, look, Yoruba nation agitators will be deemed right if indeed power does not shift to the southern part of the country. Now, the question is, if indeed people from the south want power to shift to them, why do we not seem to be having people within the south also trying to align? You can see that Atiku is trying to use northern elders to put pressure on Kwankwaso to step down so that he will be able to have some sort of edge, although Kwankwaso is saying no. Why is it that the two dominant presidential candidates in the south, Peter Obi and Tinubu, are also not having a talk? Why are they not meeting if that is the way we want to sort of play our politics? But I can tell you that that sort of politics is not encouraging. When you hear a traditional ruler saying that, look, if power does not go back to the south, that he may be tempted to side with the Yoruba nation agitators, I don't think that is a welcome development. And when you also hear the APC candidate saying that, look, our people should come out and ensure that they vote. These people are trying to hit back against us. These people don't want us to have power in the South. I don't think that that is the sort of politics that we want at the moment. Yes, there's a lot of pressure on Tinubu. It looks like even the governors that are from the north in the APC that have been supporting him over the last 1 year don't seem to have the capacity to deliver him. That's why he's reclining to that ethnic proclivity. But nonetheless, it will cost him more if he begins to recline to his southwest agenda. He should have learned from the late Chief Obafemi Awolowo. He tried that. I mean, candidate Tinubu has even tried better than Awolowo used to do. When Awolowo used to go on campaign, he didn't care to visit traditional rulers in the north in those years. He just felt that his own person, the sort of politics he plays, had the capacity to deliver him, and he didn't need to kowtow to the feudal north. But we've seen Tinubu kowtowing to the feudal north, being accepted by traditional rulers, going to several of these traditional rulers whenever he is on a campaign stop, and they seem to have been providing some support here and there. But the ultimate decider of this election will be the Nigerian voter. So he should understand that ethnic politics won't help him. Just like we've been telling Atiku Abubakar, the resort to religion, the resort to the issue of northern hegemony will not help Atiku Abubakar. What he needs to do is to galvanize a lot of Nigerians, because you need 4 out of the 6 geopolitical zones for you to emerge winner in this election. And if you can't be able to get 4 out of these geopolitical zones, I can tell you there's no how we won't go into a runoff. So we must continue to thank the people of the likes of Peter Obi and Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso for giving a push, continuous push to the 2 major candidates. And if we're able to go for a runoff, I can tell you that would be the best thing that would have happened to our democracy in the last 2 decades.
Indeed, son, as you said earlier, these are indeed interesting times. But how significant is the current narrative of uncertainty in Nigeria's political space? And what's the impact for the future, you think, especially coming from those main candidates, as you've mentioned, and what they're going through right now?
The implication here is that Nigerian politics is changing. This is the last contest that may be for the likes of Atiku Abubakar and maybe Bola Tinubu, but they should understand that a new Nigeria is birthing. We have the mid-range candidates like Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso and, of course, Peter Obi, trying to give more understanding to the Nigerian electorate. And that's what we ought to have been doing since. If you watch the campaigns that these 2 gentlemen have been embarking on, they are educating a lot of Nigerians, not just campaigning to them. While the 2 older candidates of the 2 dominant parties are only campaigning like, in the last decade or 2 decades ago to Nigerians. The thing we have here is that the nation that we had 2 decades ago or last decade ago is not the same nation that we have at the moment. The likes of Malam Nasir El-Rufai should understand that a new Nigeria is birthing. And those sort of politics that we think that some governors can just sit down and wield some powers and give Nigerians a candidate, a president, we will no longer accept that kind of politics as citizens. That's what Nigerians are telling them. Don't forget, the Nigerian Governors Forum used to wield a lot of power. They determined who eventually became president in 2007. And that's why you could see the likes of Bukola Saraki then and James Ibori wielding a lot of influence on Umaru Musa Yar'Adua. A lot of policy decisions that president took were because of the influence of these people. The same thing happened with Goodluck Jonathan in 2010 when he emerged after the death of Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, having been a former deputy governor, of course, becoming a short-term governor. He was under huge influence by these governors. And then in 2015, we saw something happening. Tinubu, who wasn't then a sitting governor, joined hands with some forces and supported President Muhammadu Buhari to emerge. Some of the governors wouldn't have wanted a Buhari to emerge because he wasn't playing the style of politics that they wanted. But somehow we saw that tectonic shift. And in 2019, President Muhammadu Buhari, of course, as an incumbent, had that support. But this time around, the governors are seeing their overall influence waning. Waning in the sense that though they are in the governing party, for example, they don't have the capacity to be able to direct the political discourse like they used to do in the past. So many of them are angry. That's why someone like Malam Nasir El-Rufai is on a media tour trying to let people know that, look, the way they want the politics to go is not going. Who told him that, as it stands right now, that the Nigerian should not be the ultimate decider? He should understand that with the developments we've had at the moment in the electoral cycle, the Nigerian voter will be the ultimate decider. So if the times are changing and our governors are not understanding that the times are changing, then it will be a sad development. For some of the dominant political parties over the year, this is for a time for them to have a rethink. And I don't know why the likes of, for example, the NMPP and the Labour Party are not thinking of wooing other smaller political parties. I mean, the discourse of an alliance should have been emerging from either the Labour Party or the NMPP at this point. Because as it stands right now, the dominant parties have seen very clear that if INEC keeps to its if INEC keeps to all that it has been saying, they may not likely win. So the discourse here is that, look, they are resorting to self-help. Self-help in the sense that the APC, saying that a lot of Nigerians may have been dissatisfied with some of its policies, is trying to see whether they can borrow the institutions of state and support their candidate to be able to emerge. And it's proven difficult because of a candidate, because of a president who thinks he owes his loyalty to the nation rather than the party or the candidate. We have also seen the major opposition candidate, Atiku Abubakar, saying that it's pretty difficult for him to be able to emerge as winner, selling the idea that, he's already embarking on a discourse. So what does this tell us as Nigerian voters, as citizens? What it tells us is that the politics we are playing at this point in time is different from what we have played in the past. And I mean, no one would have ever dreamt of a situation where the two top political parties in this country will be unsure of victory. I mean, this is a victory for the Nigerian people, and we hope that the electorate will understand the times, and INEC will understand that the period we're in is a sensitive one, and deliver a system, an election that's well acceptable by the electorate, by all political parties, so that at the end of the day, after this election, there will be new alliances, there will be a rebirth of the political process. People will know that having money is not enough to win your election. Having influence is not enough to win your election. Being in power, being the governing party is not enough to win your election, and all of that.
All right, Somna, I mean, I like the fact that you're making a case for the plurality of the political space. Don't allow anybody to step down, for anybody. Let the space be wide enough so that people can have choices. But then we know that there are still two dominant parties, the APC and the PDP. Interestingly, both parties have issues that they are dealing with. On the one hand, for the PDP, there is a gang of 5, Governor Nyesom Wike and the other 4 governors, who somehow have, refused to name who they are backing. I mean, we saw what happened with Wike, a couple of days ago, saying that he never promised to openly announce who his presidential candidate would be, which is at variance with what he said in November or thereabout, when he said not only will he announce in January, but that he will go round and campaign in all the states. So for the PDP, there's still the debacle of the gang of 5. And then on the APC, El-Rufai is saying that there is a cabal that seems to have hijacked, the president and wants to turn the outcome of the election not in favor of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the candidate of the party. Is saying further to say that this time around, they do not recognize the so-called elders in the north, and that the governors are the elders. Talk to us about the implications of the gang in the PDP and then the nameless cabal in the APC. And if you don't mind, also touch on the import of the weighty allegation of the candidate of the APC yesterday in Ekiti, when he said that we don't know who they are trying to create an atmosphere of disorder so that an interim government could be enthroned for 2 years. This is a weighty allegation from the candidate of the ruling party. Is this where we are at this time, 3 weeks to the elections?
Thank you so much, Steve. So let me start from that last question. You would have read Chief Afe Babalola, a senior lawyer in the country, earlier on last year, projecting that interim government. Then later on, it was followed by Pastor Chris Okotie. And these gentlemen, when they started flying this kite, a lot of people were skeptical. And a lot of us, who observed the polity were asking what exactly is going wrong here. Because we have a constitution in place, and that constitution never ever provided for interim government. Are we having a resurgence of the Association of Better Nigeria, ABN, that was led by then, Aton Zeribe? What exactly is going on? And for the candidate of the governing party, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to say this, I would ask a lot of Nigerians to pay attention to it. And of course, the security services ought to have been calling the candidate of the APC to debrief them on what he knows that, quote, the government may not know, or the government knows and is pretending not to know. Because if anything happens to our democracy, it will be injurious to the people of the country. A lot of nations have also invested in our elections to support us to ensure that we birth a process that's acceptable, because they're afraid that if anything happens to Nigeria, there will be a challenge. If this election does not hold, I can tell you, Steve, it will have a lot of implication for the nation. And that's why you will see that President Buhari is under pressure, not only from himself and his party leaders, but from the international community to ensure that nothing happens, with these polls that we're in. The call for an interim government is not one that should be tolerated by anybody. We have a constitution in place. We have a sitting National Assembly in place. Of course, they just went on a break, not quite long, but they can be summoned at any time. And of course, that's why you would have seen that they didn't go on a very long recess, because they will come back before the governorship election, so that in case there's any stalemate or any challenge to the presidential election, the National Assembly would have been sitting and a decision will be taken. Look, there are constitutional prescriptions on what should happen if there's a stalemate or there's any challenge. So there's no reason why people should be calling for an interim government. Now, if some people, some cabals or what it is, whatever they are called in the governing APC, are thinking towards that, they should know that this nation is beyond the presidency, this nation is beyond the governing APC, and this nation belongs to over 200 million Nigerians. They are just temporary occupants of power. And that place is just meant to be like a barrack. Just like we usually have in a common parlance, soldier come and soldier go. APC is there today, APC can go tomorrow, or APC may be retained. PDP used to be there, PDP is no longer there. Labour Party may be there tomorrow, it may not be there next tomorrow. NMPP can be there today, and tomorrow it's not there. So that place is a temporary position of power. And there must be nothing that should happen to our democratic system, because we have gained so much, Steve. We've made a lot of democratic advancement since 1999. Nothing must stop a handover on May 29. Nothing must stop an election from holding. This is a nation that is very beautiful if it's well governed. Now, if the APC has made some mistakes, why should it affect a lot of Nigerians when we have the next election? We have an election in the next 3 weeks when Nigerians will take a decision. Why should some people, hawks, according to the governing party's candidate, be considering an interim government? I don't think this is the right tone. And if there are problems within the governing party, they should try to resolve this problem among them. Yes, Tinubu is right to be angry because he has invested so much on President Muhammadu Buhari's election in 2015 and his re-election last year. But like I said before, if there is any agreement, that agreement should be between Buhari and Tinubu as a person. Or maybe APC, Buhari and Tinubu, but not Nigeria. Nigeria is not a party to whatever decision that they took. And if they are finding it difficult to be able to keep to certain agreements, or certain people within the party don't think that their candidate should emerge president, then they should understand that the system is bigger than them. So the National Security Advisor, if he is active, should be calling some members of the governing party to account for some of these statements. Because if these statements were being made by the opposition, maybe PDP or Labour Party or NNPP, I can tell you that the DSS would have summoned them to come and provide better answers as to what exactly is going on. So this is an unacceptable statement from the governing party's candidate. But it also shows the sort of pressure that Tinubu is. It looks like the governors that he's banking on are not capable of delivering him. That's why he's under tension and is talking. That's why he's being forced to recount. And you see that Tinubu has been going about talking more in Yoruba language, unlike before. So something seems to be happening. Is he getting closer and being accepted back to his fold so that the Yoruba nation can take a look at this election different from the way it ought to be, whereby it is one man, one vote? I mean, Adams Oshomole, when the APC was in opposition, used to say this categorically, that the APC was for one man, one vote. I remember when he was in the Labour Party then too. That is what a lot of Nigerians were pushing him and canvassing for, saying that every election must be one man, one vote. Now, INEC has said that this election will be one man, one vote. Why does it look like some people in the governing party don't want Nigerians to exercise that right to one man, one vote? Why they call for an interim government? So they should allow Nigerians to decide. Then let me come to the issue of Nyesom Wike that you talked about. I can tell you clearly that if Nyesom Wike didn't know how national politics is being played, well, in the last few days, he would have been educated better. You can see that the PDP seems to be, sweeping the rug off his feet. The PDP has removed all the court cases that he had instituted against the Accord Party, the SDP, and of course the APC in Rivers State. And a lot of people seem to be saying that, look, if Wike thought that his opposition to his party's candidate and his party's national chairman was a joke, of course he would understand better now that national politics is different from local politics. Now, Nyesom Wike seems to have put his fellow governors in trouble. The G5 governors at the moment, because he doesn't seem to be showing leadership. You would have seen that the likes of Governor Okezie-Ikpeazu seem to have withdrawn. You would have seen that the likes of Samuel Otomtu seems to be very careful, because it looks like the intention was to support Peter Obi, but as it stands right now, Nyesom Wike seems to be supporting Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and he's not coming out to tell them.
Yeah, if I may interject now, we've talked about the political parties, the individuals, the contenders, as it were, but what about the electoral umpire itself? I'd like us to just briefly touch on that. Briefly, please. Preparedness, and of course what it went through with all the arson attacks. And of course the Electoral Act is also coming into play here. There's a lot at stake, you think?
I can tell you Nigerians should not even be paying more attention to the candidates at the moment. In the last 3 weeks that's left, Nigerians should pay more attention to INEC. Nigerians should pay more attention to INEC because there's a lot of discordant tunes coming in from INEC. Don't forget, there was a national officer of the commission that had told Nigerians that, look, with the rate of insecurity that's ongoing, there's a tendency for the election to be shifted. Now, just within the week, we had some people saying that, look, INEC may be calling for a 2-week extension. And we don't think there should be any reason for any extension, but the burning of INEC offices too, in one way or the other, may be putting lots of pressure on the commission to want to take a decision. But let's be very careful here. to ensure that INEC is giving all the support that it needs. If there is any challenge in INEC, Professor Mahmood Yakubu should speak out. Let him speak out. I mean, Jega spoke out in 2011, and I mean, we were able to reschedule the election as a nation, although some of the ballot papers were still in South Africa and all of that, close to election day. I remember asking Professor Jega a question that day, just on the eve of the election, when he summoned a press briefing at the INEC national headquarters, where he said, look, there were some challenges and all of that, and it looked like some of the ballot papers were yet to come in. And one of the questions I'd asked him then was that I got intelligent information that the Nigerian Air Force was unable to ferry some of our ballot papers from South Africa then back to the country as at that evening. But there was still a denial here and there until the election morning we came, and of course were greeted with an election postponement. Now we saw the same thing happening in 2015. We saw the same thing happening in 2019. So if there's a challenge that we ought to know, Professor Mahmood Yakubu should not bottle up that challenge and say, look, he will push it on. But it should be made very clear to the nation so that we don't have a situation whereby there's a tendency within some political parties to think that the governing party is using INEC to its advantage. To its advantage how? There's this thinking within some political circles that the elections that were previously shifted were shifted, especially in 2015, to weaken the opposition, because they know that in the last 2 weeks, you would have spent and deployed lots of monies as candidates, both from the presidential candidate downwards. And once there's when there's a postponement, it will disarm the candidates. Many of them wouldn't have cash. Many of them would have given out monies. And of course, you know, in politics, when you give out money and nothing happens, you would have to bring fresh money, because they'll tell you that one don't pass. As we usually say in local parlance, right, you need to bring out fresh money. So once there's a postponement, I can tell you that opposition political parties usually work harder because they will need more money to be able to push for logistics and all of that. President Muhammadu Buhari faced that as a candidate in 2015 alongside Yemi Oshibanjo. And of course, Tinubu will tell you here that, including several other party members, it was Tinubu that came to their rescue. So if it happens again, and we're able to postpone the election, I can tell you that the likes of NMPP, Labour Party, and even Atiku Abubakar of the PDP may be affected, because the monies for logistics would have gone out for election, and of course you can't retrieve that money back. So if there's a problem and it will warrant a postponement, let's hear that from INEC very well, and focus should be on beavers. Let Nigerians understand that system. What we heard from Osun State is not palatable. 2 beavers reports unacceptable.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Somna Sambo, Director of News and political editor of Arise News, for a brilliant analysis as always. Thank you so much for joining us.